I found out my dad was dating my best friend, but the way he looked at him made it impossible to be mad. I should have just walked in. But the moment I saw them through that window, everything I thought I knew about love and betrayal broke apart. It was a Thursday afternoon in late October, the sky burning with that eerie golden light that always feels like the end of something. I had come home early from soccer practice, earphones in, mind still half distracted by a TikTok video my best friend Eli sent me that morning. Eli. The same Eli who, just days ago, had stayed over at our place like he always did. The same Eli who, for years, had been my safe place, the dumbass who knew every secret about me. The same Eli who was now God. It sounds insane sitting on my dad's couch like it was his, close enough that their knees touched, like it was the most natural thing in the world. My dad laughed. That low, easy laugh he only did when he was comfortable. Not polite. Not performative. But real. And Eli, he looked at him like someone looking at a home they'd never believed they could have. I couldn't breathe. Not because it was gross. Not because I was jealous. But because in that single moment, my entire foundation shook. And for the first time, I saw my father not as dad, but as a man who had spent years hiding something unbearably tender inside him. Let me rewind. My name's Jordan. I'm 19, a college freshman who still lives at home to save money. My mom died when I was 10. Car accident, quick, brutal, unfixable. Dad never remarried. Never even dated, as far as I knew. He was the kind of man who kept his life in neat boxes: work, parenting, bills. And when he laughed, really laugh at it, was always with Eli around. I never thought about it. Why would I? Eli and I met in 7th grade. He was the loud kid with paint on his hands, too honest for his own good. I was the shy one, the one who needed someone like him to drag me into life. We were opposites, which made everything click. Eli had come out as gay in sophomore year. I was straight. It didn't matter. Nothing changed between us. If anything, I was proud of him for being braver than most adults I knew. And Dad? He treated Eli like family. Made him pancakes on Sundays. Lent him books. Talked about music with him in a way he never did with me. Again, I thought it was just kindness. Not love. Not this. Now, standing outside in the twilight, watching the two people I trusted most share something so intimate, I didn't know whether to throw up or cry. I didn't do either. I walked in, slow and silent, like I was stepping into a memory. "Hey," I said. My voice cracked. I hated that. Dad and Eli jumped apart like they'd been electrocuted. Eli's face flushed deep red. Dad stood, too fast, knocking his mug off the table. It shattered. No one moved to pick it up. "Jordan," Dad started. His voice was soft. Careful. Eli just looked at me like he'd broken a promise he never got the chance to make. "You want to tell me what's going on?" I asked, and I hated the way my voice shook. Silence. Then. "We didn't mean for it to happen this way," Dad said, glancing at Eli, who looked like he might cry. "We were going to tell you." "When?" I asked. "After the wedding." Eli flinched. Dad sighed, sitting down again, this time keeping space between them. "This isn't a joke, Jordan. I care about him. A lot." I turned to Eli. "How long?" He opened his mouth. Closed it. Then said, quietly, "About 6 weeks. After your birthday." 6 weeks. That was the weekend we'd all gone to the lake house. That night Dad and Eli stayed up late playing cards while I crashed early. I remember waking up once to laughter downstairs and thinking, they're getting along too well. I didn't think it meant this. "Why?" I asked Eli, more hurt than angry now. "Why him?" Why my dad? He looked up, eyes wet but steady. Because he listens to me. Because he makes me feel safe. And because I didn't plan this, Jordan. It just happened. It just happened. I could have screamed. I could have told them both to go to hell. But I didn't. Because underneath the betrayal, underneath the weirdness, was something undeniable. My dad looked at Eli like he was the answer to every lonely night since Mom died. And Eli looked back like he finally found someone who saw all of him without judgment. And the truth? I loved them both too much to pretend I didn't see it. So I left. I walked to the park, sat on the swings, and cried harder than I had in years. Not just for what I saw but for what it meant. For how life doesn't wait for your permission to change. For how love shows up where it shouldn't and makes a home anyway. I don't know how long I sat there. Hours maybe. The cold crept in, numbing my hands. And then I heard footsteps behind me. Eli. He didn't say anything at first. Just sat on the swing beside mine. I know this sucks, he said. Understatement, I muttered. He smiled, barely. I didn't want to hurt you. I know. But I couldn't lie to you either. Not about this. Not about how he makes me feel. I turned to him, eyes raw. Are you in love with him? He didn't hesitate. Yes. And that's when I realized the worst part wasn't that they were together. It was that it was real. Not a fling. Not a secret rebellion. But something deeper. I need time, I said. Take all the time you need, he replied, voice cracking. I nodded. And for the first time, I saw Eli not just as my best friend, but as someone I might lose not to betrayal, but to love. To my father. I didn't go home that night. I slept at my cousin Ray's place, curled up on his beat-up futon with his snoring pit bull breathing hot wind in my face. I didn't tell him what happened. I just said, family drama, and he nodded like he knew the kind. Maybe he did. Everyone in our town had a complicated family in one way or another. But not like mine. Not like this. The next morning, I had 12 missed calls from Dad. 2 from Eli. And one text that said, I'm so sorry. Please talk to me. But I couldn't. Not yet. I skipped class. I wandered downtown instead, drinking shitty gas station coffee and watching people walk by like they were in a different universe, one where their dad wasn't dating their best friend. I kept thinking about Mom. What would she say if she were here? Would she have seen it coming? Would she have been hurt? Angry? Or would she have smiled and said, everyone deserves love, Jordan, even your dad? I didn't know. And it made me feel more lost than ever. By the time I walked back into our house 2 days later, everything felt different. The hallway smelled like fresh laundry. The living room was spotless. Dad always cleaned when he was nervous. He was waiting at the kitchen table, hands folded, coffee in front of him. His eyes looked tired. Older. Hey, he said gently. I dropped my bag by the door. Where's Eli? He hasn't been here since Friday. That hurt in a strange way I wasn't ready for. Okay. We sat in silence for a long time. The hum of the fridge, the tick of the clock, the kind of silence that wraps around your chest and makes it hard to breathe. Then Dad said, you want me to end it? I looked up sharply. What? He looked straight at me, eyes unwavering. If it's what you need to be okay. I'll walk away. It hit me like a punch in the gut because he meant it. Every word. My father, who had barely smiled in years, who had opened his heart to someone after so much loss, was willing to shut it all down for me. No, I said, voice low. You sure? I nodded. I don't want you to be miserable just so I can pretend this didn't happen. He gave me the smallest, saddest smile. I'm not trying to replace your mom. I know. I loved her. I always will. I swallowed the knot in my throat. And now you love him. It wasn't a question. Dad looked down at his coffee, then back at me. Yeah. I do. I exhaled slowly. Then something in me broke open. Why didn't you tell me? I was scared, he said. Scared of how you'd see me. Of what it would mean for us. I've kept this part of myself hidden for so long, I didn't know how to show it to you. My voice cracked. You could have trusted me. I should have. I'm sorry. There was another pause. Then I said the thing I'd been trying not to say, I'm scared too. Dad tilted his head. Of what? Losing both of you. Of never being able to look at either of you the same way again. He stood slowly, walked around the table, and knelt in front of me like I was a kid again. You won't lose us. We're still yours, Jordan. Always. I cried. God, I didn't mean to, but I did. Big, stupid, messy tears. And Dad just held me like he used to when I skinned my knees or got picked on in middle school. And for the first time, I let myself feel it all: anger, confusion, sadness, and somewhere under it acceptance. After that, things didn't go back to normal. They became something new. Eli and I didn't talk for a week. Not because I hated him but because I didn't know how to talk to him without breaking down. Every time I saw a photo of Eustace at the beach, us at prom, us on the roof eating pizza at midnight, I felt like I was holding the past in my hands and watching it fade. But eventually, I texted him. Can we talk? He replied in 30 seconds. Eli, anywhere. Anytime. We met at the diner downtown. Neutral ground. He was already there when I walked in, nervously stirring a cup of tea he probably wasn't drinking. His eyes lit up when he saw Methan, dimmed with worry. I sat across from him, heart pounding. I missed you, he said first. I know. I didn't mean to fall for him. I didn't plan it. I believe you. But I did fall for him. And I'm not sorry for that. I'm sorry I hurt you. I nodded, staring down at the table. You were my best friend. And now you're something else. I still want to be in your life, he whispered. In whatever way you'll let me. I met his eyes. That depends. Are you serious about him? He didn't hesitate. Yes. Then you need to know something, I said. He's been through hell. After Mom died he barely slept. He worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat. He put everything into raising me. He doesn't do things halfway. So if you're just experimenting. I'm not, he said quickly. Jordan, I love him. It was the first time he said it out loud. It was like a switch flipped in his face, like he let the words settle into the air and dared me to take them away. And I didn't. Instead, I reached across the table and took his hand. Then be good to him, I said. Because if you break his heart, I will absolutely kill you. He laughed. Then we both laughed. It was the first real laugh we'd shared in weeks. That night, he came over for dinner again. We didn't pretend things were normal, but we didn't treat each other like strangers either. And over time, the ache dulled. The weirdness faded. And I started to understand something I hadn't before. Love is not a straight line. It's not neat or simple or easy. It doesn't ask for permission. It just shows up. Sometimes in the most inconvenient places. Like in your father's eyes when he looks at the boy you grew up with. I watched them together more carefully after that. Quietly. They were gentle with each other. Thoughtful. They didn't flaunt it, didn't hide it. It was just there, in the way Dad remembered how Eli liked his eggs, in the way Eli knew when Dad's shoulder acted up from an old injury. It was in the little things. And slowly, I realized I wasn't losing them. I was gaining something different. Not a perfect version of the past, but a new kind of future. It was around Christmas when things finally began to settle. Our house, always a little too quiet during the holidays, felt alive again. Dad actually strung up lights this year. He played music in the mornings. I even caught him humming while he washed dishes. That hadn't happened in God, maybe ever. Eli came over more. Sometimes for dinner. Sometimes just to hang out. He never stayed the night, not while I was home at least, and part of me appreciated that. I think he understood that my acceptance didn't mean instant comfort. It was a process. For all of us. One night, a few days before New Year's, we were all sitting in the living room, watching one of those awful Hallmark movies Eli liked to mock but secretly loved. Dad was on one end of the couch. I was in the middle. Eli was on the other end, sipping hot chocolate, wearing a ridiculous fuzzy sweater with a llama on it. He looked over at Dad and said, "I think Jordan's finally starting to tolerate me again." I snorted. "That's optimistic." Dad raised an eyebrow. "Progress is progress." We all laughed. It was small, but it was real. That night, after Eli left, Dad came into my room. Knocked once, like he always did. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah. Just tired." He hesitated. "I want to thank you." "For what?" "For letting me have this. For letting us have this." I sat up. "You don't have to thank me for being decent." "No, I do," he said, stepping inside. "Because what you did wasn't just decent. It was kind. Mature. Braver than I had any right to expect from you." I looked down at my hands. "I still don't totally get it, you know." "You don't have to. You just have to be honest. With me. With yourself." "I'm trying." He nodded. "And that's enough." He started to leave, then turned back. "Do you ever think about your mom?" "All the time." "I do too." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "What do you think she'd say about all this?" He was quiet for a long time. Then he smiled, soft and sad. "I think she'd say you turned out just fine." That hit me harder than I expected. Maybe we weren't broken. Maybe we were just different now. The new year came and went. Eli stayed over that night. We played board games, watched fireworks on TV, and when the countdown hit 0, I saw Dad lean over and kiss him. Soft. Quick. Tender. I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. Because for once, it didn't feel like something stolen from me. It felt earned. That spring, I got into the photography program at a college in Boston. It was my dream school. I'd applied on a dare and didn't think I'd get in. When the acceptance letter came, Dad cried. Eli hooped so loud the neighbors probably heard. We went out for dinner to celebrate, the three of us. Our little, strange, unconventional family. At the restaurant, Dad raised his glass and said, "To new beginnings." We clinked glasses. And I looked around at both of them, me father and my best friend, and realized how far we'd come. But not everything stayed easy. There was this one night, just a few weeks before I was set to move out, when I walked into the kitchen and heard them arguing. Not loud. Not angry. But tense. "I just don't want him to feel abandoned," Dad said. "I'm not replacing him," Eli replied. "I never could." I know, Dad said. "It's just he's my son. And he's leaving. And I'm scared." Eli was quiet for a moment. Then he said, We'll still be here when he comes back. That's the point, right? Dad didn't answer. I stepped back before they saw me. I shouldn't have been listening. But something about that conversation stuck with me. Dad was scared of being alone again. And Eli didn't just love him. He got him. In a way I never really had. The night before I left for Boston, Dad knocked on my door again. I packed you some food, he said. Snacks for the road. Thanks, Dad. He hesitated. You know, when you were a baby, your mom and I used to take turns watching you sleep. I'd stand there at the crib, just watching. Thinking I had no idea how to raise a kid. You did okay. I made a lot of mistakes. I shrugged. I'm still here. He smiled. Yeah. You are. Then, after a moment, he said, I love you, Jordan. No matter what. That's never changed. It never will. I know, I said. And I meant it. That night, Eli came to say goodbye too. We didn't do a big emotional speech. He just hugged me for a long time and said, come back when you're ready. We'll still be here. I looked at him. Really looked. And saw the guy who used to sneak gummy bears into my locker, who defended me from bullies, who sat through 4 seasons of Grey's Anatomy just because I asked him to. The guy who somehow ended up falling for my dad. You better take care of him, I said. He nodded. With everything I've got. Boston was everything I hoped for. Different. Fast. Loud. Beautiful in ways my hometown never was. But I missed them. More than I thought I would. We texted. We called. Sometimes I FaceTimed during dinner, just to see them laugh at each other's dumb jokes. Eli sent me care packages with snacks and Polaroids of my dad asleep on the couch with a book on his chest. In some of the photos, they were just them. Together. Peaceful. It made me weirdly happy. One weekend, in early fall, I surprised them with a visit. I didn't tell them I was coming. I just showed up. When I walked through the door, Dad dropped the laundry basket in shock. Eli screamed and tackled me into a hug. They both looked healthier. Happier. And for the first time, I saw them not just as the people I'd grown up with, or the ones who turned my world upside down. I saw them as 2 men who found something rare. Something worth fighting for. And I realized. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't confused. I was proud. Proud that my dad had the courage to love again. Proud that my best friend had found a home in someone who truly saw him. Proud of myself for letting go. That night, we sat on the porch, watching the stars, passing around hot cider like old times. Dad leaned back and said, This is all I ever wanted. Eli smiled. You've got it. And me? I just sat there, wrapped in a blanket, listening to them laugh, thinking how strange life is. It gives you what you need, not what you expect. Because love doesn't always come in the form you imagine. Sometimes it shows up in a face you've known your whole life. And in the eyes of someone you thought you'd lost. Winter came early that year. Boston was wrapped in white by mid-November, and the cold seeped through everything: me coat, my bones, my thoughts. Finals were approaching. My brain was fried from late nights in the darkroom, my fingers always ink-stained from developing film. I had found something beautiful in photography, a way to capture moments before they slipped away. Maybe it was my way of holding on. I started a photo series called Unspoken Homes. My professor loved it. Said it was raw. Honest. Every shot had something fragile in it: people at crosswalks holding hands, fathers braiding their kids' hair, couples laughing in grocery aisles. I didn't tell her the inspiration came from 2 men sitting on a second-hand couch in a small living room back home. I hadn't told many people about Dad and Eli. Not because I was ashamed but because it felt sacred. Like something small and glowing I needed to protect from the world's noise. But the truth had a way of showing up in my work. And eventually, in my words. When one of my classmates asked about the man in the photo taped to the edge of my desk, Dad holding a mug, Eli leaning into his shoulder, both of them laughing, I just said, "That's my family." No explanation. No apologies. And no one blinked. It felt freeing. I came home again for winter break. Everything was quieter than usual. The air felt full of waiting. I didn't know what for, just that something had shifted. Dad picked me up from the station. His hair had more gray in it. He played that same old Van Morrison song in the car. But he smiled more. Talked more. Asked about school, about my photos. It was the most connected we'd felt in a while. When we pulled into the driveway, I saw Eli on the porch, stringing up lights in a hideous green beanie. He looked up, saw me, and broke into a grin. "Help me before I break my neck," he called out. I laughed. Not a chance. But I did. I climbed up beside him and held the ladder while he reached the last hook. He turned, still holding the cord, and said, "I'm glad you're back." Me too. And I meant it. That night, we decorated the tree together, something we hadn't done since Mom died. We played music, made cookies we burned, and watched Die Hard like it was tradition. It was chaotic, messy, warm. It felt like home. At one point, Dad stepped out to take a call. Eli and I stayed on the couch, nursing mugs of tea. He looked at me and said, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you think I'm too young for him?" It caught me off guard. "I mean, yeah," he added quickly, "I know we're adults. I know love doesn't care about age. But sometimes I see the way people look at us. And I wonder if you think it's weird." I studied him. His nervous hands. The crack in his voice. "I think it's weird because it's real," I said. "Because it's not some stupid phase. It's not for show. You love him. He loves you. And that's not something people expect." He blinked. "That's not a no." I smiled. "It's a hell no. You're exactly what he needs. And I think he's what you need, too." Eli stared at me for a long time. Then he said softly, "I never had a family before you two. You do now." On Christmas morning, we opened presents in pajamas. Dad got me a vintage camera I'd been eyeing for months. Eli gave me a first edition of a poetry book we both loved. I gave them a framed photo I took, one of the three of us at dinner, mid-laughter, unposed, unfiltered. They didn't say much. Just hugged me. Held on a little longer than usual. Later, while Dad made pancakes, Eli pulled me aside in the hallway. "I'm going to propose," he whispered. I blinked. "What?" "Next week. New Year's Eve. I already got the ring." He pulled a small velvet box from his coat and opened it. It was simple. Elegant. Quietly perfect. "I've never been more sure of anything," he said. I stared at the ring. Then at him. "Are you nervous?" "Terrified." I smiled. "Good. That means it matters." New Year's Eve came faster than I expected. We hosted a small gathering, just a few close friends, some family, lots of food. Dad grilled outside in a winter coat. Eli made a playlist. I hovered, camera in hand, pretending not to know what was about to happen. When midnight hit, everyone cheered. Fireworks burst outside the window. Champagne was passed around. And in the middle of it all, Eli turned to my dad. The room quieted. The music dimmed. "I wasn't going to do this in front of everyone," he said. "But then I thought, what the hell? You taught me not to be afraid of love." Dad froze. His eyes wide. Eli dropped to one knee. Pulled out the ring. I love you. I love you in every possible way. And if you'll let me, I want to love you for the rest of my life. The room held its breath. Then Dad laughed. Cried. And said yes. People clapped. Someone popped another bottle. I took the picture, heart pounding. It was the single most beautiful thing I'd ever captured. 6 months later, they got married in our backyard. Small. Quiet. Surrounded by flowers and people who got it. I was the best man. I gave a speech that made half the guests cry and the other half laugh until they choked. Eli wore navy blue. Dad wore gray. They looked ridiculous together. And perfect. After the ceremony, Dad pulled me aside. His voice was rough. Thank you, he said. For everything. I hugged him. Just be happy. We are. I believed him. Now. It's been 2 years. I live in New York now. I teach photography. My work's been in a few galleries. Life is good. I visit often. They come to the city sometimes, though Dad still complains about the traffic. Eli makes playlists for every drive. They send me videos of them singing terribly in the car, dancing in the kitchen, playing Scrabble and cheating mercilessly. They adopted a dog. Named him Poe. He's the ugliest mutt I've ever seen, but they love him. Every time I go home, the house feels warmer. Lived in. Alive. Sometimes I still think about the moment I found them on that couch, the betrayal, the confusion, the heartbreak. But I don't regret any of it. Because it led us here. To love. To truth. To something real. And in the end, that's all I ever wanted. The end. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.